This is Joe Cook interviewing Idriss Asumanu on Wednesday, the 18th of July in Borsal Heath, Birmingham. Idriss was born in Lyon, France in 1993 and migrated to Birmingham in 2002. So, Idriss, could you tell me about your family background?
So my mum's from Togo and my dad's from Ghana. So I sort of have a dual mixed heritage. So I can never say that I'm from one place or the other because I have family from both and I I have heritage from both as well. But I was born in France and yeah, that's kind of it. Well, that's as brief as I can make it.
Could you tell me about growing up in France?
Yeah, as a kid, you don't you never really realize the differences and sort of the culture behind it. I personally really liked it. I really enjoyed it. I grew up single child, so never really had any brothers and sisters, but always had friends around, and um, I knew always people around sort of hang out with. And one thing I do one thing that really kind of struck me was the sort of the environment and the people. People were quite nice in France. Well, at the time they were, um, and generally things are a little bit more simpler. But obviously that's like the nineties. Nineties were simpler times, and yeah, growing up in France, it's it's different. It's different. You see different things. You go to different places. Where I grew up in Lyon, it's is the second city of France. It's the second capital. It's quite a large city. Well, it's a metropolitan city, more metropolitan than it used to be, through the development it had throughout the years, and going kind of living around it, living in the area that I grew up with, you tend to sort of get stuck in, and not really had the chances of sort of moving around and stuff. But obviously that's not answering the question. But essentially, it's different to living anywhere else. Yeah.
Could you tell me some of your early childhood memories?
Yeah, a lot of the early memories that I have of living in France is mainly sort of playing around in the park and playing around near where I live, like having just playing around with friends and sort of being around people that I knew from school and stuff, and just from the areas and neighbors and things. I mean, we lived in a sort of flat block. Or yeah, the thing is that I don't know how to describe it because it's not like a normal flat where it's like a tower. It's more like a big stretch of block. So imagine a possibly 2 kilometer block, tower block that rises about 10 to 9 floors and then just stretches across to the other road, and going from different parts of the building and then going across the balconies as well and seeing different areas of it. That in itself is quite different. So there was always things to do and always places to sort of be around, and being around the parks and stuff. So that we were never really bored, kind of playing around. But and then going into the city, into the main city, you start to explore. You start to see how the city is. You start to explore how the people are, and it's it shapes you in a way. Yeah, I'm not explaining myself quite clearly, but um, yeah.
Could you tell me more about the people you experienced within the city?
Yeah, so generally people in Lyon are quite nice. Like they're quite well, at the time when I grew up there, they were nice. They were just to themselves. They were French. Best way I can sort of describe them. Not in a way where people kind of up themselves and sort of stuck up. They were just straight to the point, kind of passionate, blunt, because there weren't really any other ways to sort of say any other thing. So things were sort of straight to the point. People were generally so nice because there wasn't really a thing where there wasn't really a thing where people would sort of subtly say something just because they didn't want any trouble or anything. But yeah, I mean, the people I sort of grew up with, even like the adults and stuff, they were quite nice. The thing about people in France, actually, everyone is French. Oh, everyone is considered French. There's no thing about, oh, you're African or you're Arab or whatever. That's happened more recently, and back in the 60s and sort of 70s when racism was still a big thing, and there was still obviously issues considering sort of inequality and sort of segregation and immigration and things like that, but it's not as severe as it is now. But at the same time, people consider you as another French person because you're from the same country. People stood for the same thing. There weren't really any. The only not necessarily discrimination or inequality would have been from people who were just ignorant, and they would get pushed out like just to the side because we don't really consider ignorance then. But again, that was back in those times when I was young and ignorant myself. One of the earliest memories I can tell you actually is every Sunday I would my mum would give me some money to go down to the local bakery down our road, and I would order maybe usually just one really big baguette, and it would be so hot and so fresh that you could just smell it from across the road, and that's something I always sort of remember. It's so French of me to say, but like the freshness of the bread and the sort of the inside of it is something you can never get anywhere else, not in any other country. And even just the other sort of bakeries and sort of pastries that they had there as well, just looking at them and looking how fresh they are is something else. I remember going back about 3 years ago actually, and I went back to the same bakery and bought like a little pastry, and it tasted the same way that it did like 20 years ago. And to have that again is quite blissful. I mean, I felt really privileged to have experienced that again. But yeah, the food is really fresh, really nice, and it's really good. It's one thing I do miss about France, the food, the freshness, the type of sort of food that they cook there, and the fact that nothing is really restricted. Like everything is good. Even if it's like a kebab or something, it's like the best kebab you'll ever have.
Going back to your childhood, could you tell me a bit about going to nursery in France? Your early memories of nursery.
So school in France is very different to school here, and one thing I do remember is the actually there's about 2-3 things I do remember. One in particular is the system they have. So they obviously teach you like history, French, and math and things like that, and just the basics of sort of teach you and things. But But then in terms of doing exams and like moving up to in class, it's sort of similar to I think what America does or what any other country do. If you fail a year, then you have to retake the year until you pass it. So if you fail 3 times in like year 2, then you have to stay in year 2 and then progress somehow. I think there may be an exception once you're too grown that you have to sort of move on to the next year and catch up and things like that. But yeah, if you fail a year, then you have to retake that year with the people going up that year. And well, if you pass, then you pass, and you can move on to the next year. And that put a lot of pressure on me from my parents. Well, yeah, so I got a lot of pressure from my parents to pass into the next year. So every time they would always make sure that I was doing well in school, that I was working hard enough, that I wasn't messing around, that I was doing my homework, that I was doing the work and getting it. And if I made like a mistake or something, if my writing wasn't clear or it was really bad, then they tell me about it. And that in itself puts you into a lot of, yeah, as a kid, it isn't really nice to have all that pressure. It's like, oh my God, I need to pass for the next year, otherwise my parents will kill me. And yeah, so and at the same time as well, you don't necessarily learn them enough, or you don't really grasp what they tell you unless you're really interested in something, or you're really good at something like maths or English or whatever. I mean, French, obviously. But it also teaches you about discipline as well. The second thing is the fact that there's no uniform. So when you go to school, you just wear your own clothes or whatever clothes you wear to go to school. And that's something I found weird here, which I'll obviously elaborate later on. And then lastly, I think one thing I do remember was there was some form of I remember one of my teachers back in France being like, so can we just pause for a second? So I remember one of my teachers being very unlikable, mainly towards me, and that and I only just kind of realized later on when I kind of grew up that she was sort of discriminating and sort of going against me for no reason. And I just really disliked her because she was just being a pain to me, and I didn't really like her. And, all my other teachers, even my previous ones, were fine, and I actually learned from them. I actually admired them and stuff. But that one teacher, and she was the last one that I had before moving to France, she was really, really bad. So I just really didn't like her, and it's mainly because of the way she just sort of approached me. I remember a time I got into a fight with someone in my class, and she sought to antagonize me rather than antagonize both of us, because I had punched him. I think I'm punched him in the nose and he was bleeding or something like that, and then she just happened to just antagonize me for some reason. But who cares? She was that kind of person. So there is some form of discrimination or even favoritism amongst certain people, and that comes down to the culture that people sort of brought up in. And it goes into a thing where, like, because at the time I was very ignorant, I left France at a time where it was fine and I didn't know any better. But knowing things now, I kind of realize the difference between here and there, and the fact that I'm always going to be thankful for coming here. Because if I didn't, there's a lot of things I wouldn't have been able to do.
So jumping back a bit, can you talk about some of your early memories of nursery?
Yeah, so actually, I'll share this with you. I remember, and the things I think I remember the first time going to nursery. I think, or even being in nursery. I don't actually remember actually going into nursery for the first time, but I remember other people, like other kids, going into nursery, and I think every time there's someone new, they will always cry on the first day. I think it's always been a thing, and I thought I had done that. I don't know if I have though. I'm always unclear about that, but I've had some really good experiences in nursery. Obviously, as you do, you learn new things. You learn how to count. You learn how to say new words in French, and you make new friends. One of the best memories actually was in fact that I had my birthday, one of my birthdays, at school, at nursery, and it was sort of a surprise. My mum came in with a cake, and then all the kids were around, and I don't know how I felt. I guess I was happy because it was celebrating my birthday and stuff. But at the same time, it's one thing I do remember. I even have like a photo of it somewhere at home, which I keep near me just to remember and good times. But then jumping to primary, it became a little more serious. You had to do the work. You had to make sure you pass to the next stage, to the next year. If you don't, you obviously fail. And finding out about sort of like doing history, doing sports, and doing other things as well, and having to sort of compete with other kids, and growing up and making new friends and finding about new people and things, and all of that changes you, and it makes you into a person, and it sort of drives you. One thing about primary school in France as well is we don't have school on Wednesdays, so it was a complete it was a complete shock when I came in and was like, you go to school on Wednesdays? You wear uniforms or something? Like, what is wrong with you guys? So yeah, we don't have school on Wednesdays. We only go Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We have Wednesdays off. And jumping into secondary school, if I did go to secondary school in France, we would have had the same thing, but then have a half day on Saturdays. So we finish around 1 and then go home after that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So 2002, just before I went to back to Africa as holiday, and then came, no, sorry, that's inaccurate. Just before I left, which I remember there was only sort of a handful of students at school. And this was like as close to summer break, and I had just finished year 4 at the time to go into year 5, and I didn't realize it was going to be the last time I was going to be there. And I thought, oh yeah, I'm going to move to England, and people asking me, oh, can you speak English? I was like, no. So the journey and sort of the transition was kind of went over my head, because I didn't realize it was such a big move at the time. I thought, okay, I'll be there for a year or 2, and then I'll come back, and I'll still see my friends. So I'll come in once or twice a year, and then when I settled here, it was like, okay, so I guess this is it. This is real. I'm gonna have to find school somehow. Yeah.
Could you tell me more about your journey to the UK?
Yeah, so from Lyon up into Birmingham is quite a stretch to say the least. We took the coach up to Calais. So we went through Dijon, we went through Paris, and then got to Calais, and then from there we took the the ferry through the channel, and it went on. No, it went even went over. Yeah, it went over. So we took actual ferry, and then from there it drove us to London, where my dad, who was already here and sort of setting things up, picked us up with my uncle, who drove us to Birmingham. And at the time, I thought we was going to stay in London. So I thought we were staying in London. I thought Birmingham was like a little area in London, just like Lyon. Lyon has like different sort of areas. Like the one I grew up in was called Bron, and I thought it was like a version of Raw in London. So I thought, oh yeah, I'm gonna stay in London. Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize it was no city. So when we went across London, I thought, okay, cool. It should take us about 15 minutes to get there. I'm in the big city, the capital of England. Everything's new. Everything's quite rural and things. And then you get to the moment where I thought, okay, maybe it's outside London. And then we're there for about 3 hours. Like, okay, this is much further than anticipated. And then when we get to the city, I'm like, oh, okay, so Birmingham's a different city altogether. I didn't know that. So when we got there, the first home I lived in was Erdington. So I originally lived in Erdington for the first year. We was in sort of a sharing home with other people, and I went to school near the area. So I went to primary school. I did year 5 there for half the year, and then in 2003. So this was 2002. So yeah, so I left France 2002 to come to England, and then September, October, I went into school, into primary school to do my year 5, and at the time that's when I was really learning English. So I spent a few weeks during the summer holidays sort of watching TV, just chilling out, and just doing whatever kids were doing at the time. And I was learning English when I got to school. So I was still doing in class and stuff, and I think the first thing I had learned was the name of a rubber, because we was using pencils. I think it was doing maths or something like that. At the time they called it numeracy. And in French, the name for rubber is gum. So you'd say, oh, I can have rubber. But I kept saying gum, and I kept trying to do the sort of the gesture for it, and she said, oh, do you want rubber? And I'm like, yeah. So she gave me a rubber, and I always remember that. So I thought, okay, rubber is gum in English. So I used it, and so that's actually the first memory I have of being here in English. And then after a few weeks, or even after a few months, they put me in sort of a special learning class that's sort of after school to better my English. And they gave me like a little dictionary that had French and English to sort of keep and to translate and to find words that I didn't really know, which was really generous and really helpful as well, because I had both sides. And yeah, so my year there was quite good, but I still struggled even writing English and even speaking and getting it right, the wrong tenses. I didn't even know the difference between there and there, and so I kept saying. Actually, I didn't even know the difference between is and was, actually. So even then, it was still so difficult for me to sort of learn. That was the biggest struggle I had. But as you grow up in a new country, you start to learn more, and you start to sort of adapt and to be more comfortable. So in 2003, we moved out from Erdington, moved into a bigger place in Newtown. Not too far from the city centre, and I went to primary school there. So I finished my year 5 down the road at the primary school down the road to where I lived. And there I started to meet new friends, people that I still talk to and like me up till today actually. So, and I had already sort of gotten a grasp of English, the English language, and sort of the writing, even though it was still a little bit difficult. And so after the year five, gone into year six, and then I just started to sort of integrate within the culture and the system, and sort of understood what it was to be part of sort of the UK. So, yeah, that's good.
Could you tell me more about some of your early memories in Newtown?
Yeah. So, so I've got a friend called Adrian. I met him on my way back home after school. So he was in my class, and I remember running to. So the primary school was past the park, like the main park in the area, and then my home was like on the other side, and I would always try to sort of run to see how fast I could sort of go because I'm just that extra. And he just happened to just sort of bump into me and just started talking and just chatting. And because he lived in the flat next to mine, it just became a thing where it's like, oh, okay, so you're next door to me, yada yada yada. So, and then me and him became like best friends ever since. I've known him for 15 years. Wow. Yeah, I've known him since over 15 years. We still talk now. Like, still talk now. And I think Newtown having its reputation, at the time I wasn't really so conscious about it, but I kind of knew things were happening. But at the time, it was a simpler time. Like, it was an easier time. Kids could sort of go around, play around at whatever time they choose. Obviously, not too late because of school and stuff. But I remember one year, I think 2005 or 2004, going around with just a bunch of my friends from primary school, going around trick or treating during Halloween. Like, we were all dressed up with masks and stuff. We just went around in different people's houses, getting sweets and chocolates and changing stuff, which is so weird to do. But it was fine, and we knew that we was gonna do it, and kind of went around. There was a few years as well where we went water balloon fighting. So we went out, bought some water balloons, even some water guns, and just had a big old water fight and stuff. And that was great, actually. Like, some of the best summers I've had. And near the area, not too far from the park, there used to be a youth center there, where every summer they would put on some like a club called Splash. You pay, I think, £1 or £2 to sort of get in every day, and you could do as many activities. You can even go on the computers. You can do some sports. I was mainly doing like badminton and like table tennis, because that's something we always wanted to sort of do. So, and I met some new people as well. I made some really good friends there, and now I did 2 summers there before going into secondary school, and that was some of the best times I've had, like in terms of summer. And at first I wasn't really too keen because I didn't really know too much about it, but my friends was like, oh yeah, there's a thing going on down there, like, come along, we'll just have some fun. And I found it really fun, and it was a great way to sort of meet new people and to have fun and to spend time rather than just do nothing. And it kind of establishes how important youth centers and like youth activities is to people, especially in that sort of area. Obviously, later on, you grow up and you do other things. You got too much work. You go on holiday if you're able to, and things become different, and then the area starts to be a little bit different. And yeah, at the time, everything sort of changed throughout the time and throughout the years.
So, so after year 6, what happened next?
So I went to Aston Manor, not too far from Newtown, not too far from Maston. Me and my friend Adrian, we both got in, and that's when we sort of became really good friends and stuff. And so year 7 was, I think, the best year I had at school. Obviously, you come in fresh, you're newbie, you're year 7, so you're just kind of there and you don't know any better. And at the time, the experience gets harder, it gets more challenging, and you learn new things, you experience new things, you do different things. So new subjects are sort of presented to you, and you're having to sort of integrate within that. Obviously, the school system, well, secondary school system is different to primary, where you get put into sets with maths and English. So I was always going to be in set 3, which is sort of the lowest. Because obviously struggling with English at the time and sort of literacy in general was always going to be a struggle. French was obviously one of the easiest things that I could do. So yeah, I thought, yeah, you know, I'll be fine here. And drama at year 7. And because at the time we never really had a proper drama teacher, we just had another teacher, I think science teacher, who just covered drama. So at the time it was like, you know, drama's drama. Never really thought about it too tough, but I did wanna go into sort of the creative arts or even acting or something. But I never thought drama was something I wanted to do. And then, yeah, we had like a residential at the end of the year to sort of, I guess, bond people together. And since then, it was a really great experience. I think before year 7 or after year 7, I took a trip back to France to sort of visit family and sort of see my friends again. And that's sort of the last time I've been there since I left. And it was all good. And I never really went back until like 10 years later. And then year 8 was a very challenging sort of time for me. Obviously, you grow up, you live differently, things change, and things happen. It was slightly not depressing, but hard for me to sort of integrate and to sort of develop, because we had just switched up classes, so I wasn't with the friends that I had gone through the first year in year 7 with. I completely new people, and going through that kind of changed me in a way. And so I had to sort of start from scratch, and obviously you develop as a person, you grow up, you're becoming a teenager, and you start developing new experiences with new people. And yeah, a good thing about it was the fact that at the time we got a new drama teacher, Mr. Robinson, and he was the reason why I got into acting in the first place. So because he was a proper drama teacher, it was a thing where his approach to teaching was something I could really sort of get into and sort of appreciate and actually learn and have fun with it. And at that time, that's when I sort of decided that I wanted to go into drama. I wanted to go into acting because it was something that would allow me to express myself in a way. So yeah, so that's pretty much year 8 in a nutshell. Year 9 was a little bit easier, a little bit better, and obviously groups of friends. Drama was going a little bit better. French was obviously going much better. Art, on the other hand, was still a bit of a struggle, and I'll sort of get into that later on. But I was really enjoying drama. I got into Little Shop of Horrors, which was a Christmas production that Idriss put on at the near the Christmas time, and later on I would do more throughout the years, and like doing smaller roles and then doing a little bit bigger roles at the end. And it was a time where I would it was a time and sort of a place where I would feel comfortable being myself and being able to have my own personality, somewhere where where I felt I could really thrive. Like I couldn't really do much with maths or science, or even English for that matter, but I could really sort of get into drama. So I think the creativity in the arts would be somewhere where I would sort of kind of migrate within the school and then sort of be around. And obviously at the time, school was obviously changing and the system was changing, so things were getting harder, and they weren't really making it as easy to sort of kind of get through.
Could you elaborate on some of the changes you were facing?
So, it's obviously the school system and the I mean, I could go into the sort of the lunches and the changes of dietary because of obviously Jamie Oliver, but that wouldn't be as relevant as anything else. But more the way the teachers were teaching, and the sort of challenges I've had to sort of face through adapting myself to their methods and their ways. And I felt it wasn't just a French thing. It was more like not necessarily psychological, but a learning thing, because I wasn't as developing the educational sort of system to really understand and sort of catch up in a way. I mean, I've never really seen myself or considered myself to be dyslexic, but I always felt as if I was always sort of behind or sort of near that spectrum. At the same time, I was always sort of more technical, even more hands-on rather than practical and theoretical. And be it having to go through a lot of theoretical and sort of written stuff really kind of held me back in a way. So doing more practical stuff like PE or even drama for that instance, or even art, really allowed me to sort of shine in those areas. Even maths per se, I wouldn't really find that so difficult, because it was more sort of breaking down and calculating things and just giving answers. But with English, I went into the set 2, which was sort of the middle, and I started to learn more and started to develop more and get new techniques and new ways of phrasing things. And I was still sort of learning and not really understanding how to English better, to wrongly say. But yeah, so with year 10, obviously the timetables shift. The year 10s and 11s have different timetables to like the other years below, and it was a time where I was grown, where I was a proper teen and sort of properly I had my own personality and I had my own sort of groups of friends, and I knew sort of what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to do was go into the arts and go into acting. And to be fair, there's not really much to say about year 10 actually. I'm just trying to think.
You spoke about a lot of what was going on in school. Could you tell us a bit about what you're up to outside of school, like extracurriculum stuff?
Okay, so in terms of extra activities, that's the thing. There was at the time there weren't really a lot to do around the area, or even in general. There wasn't really a lot going on, or even I just wasn't really aware of things that were going on around the area. I was mainly just focusing on school. So I mean, I was going out into town and sort of hanging out with friends and going football and just meeting up with people, and that would keep me busy. So it's mainly socializing with friends and sort of doing like activities and things that would sort of keep me busy and allow me to sort of do other things. I was never really outspoken or even that confident at the time. Well, as I wasn't as confident as I am now back then, because I was never really given the opportunity to sort of speak out, even have my own personality. There's always someone in front of me, or someone always taking the lead, or someone always seen as someone who's sort of the lead. There's always someone who was always seen as someone with a leading role rather than myself, even though I had my own opinions and my own thoughts. So I thought, I'm not going to waste my breath, and I'm just going to keep myself to myself and sort of do my own thing, because I'm not going to waste my time and stuff. There were a few instances where I would sort of fight or even like get into conflicts with a lot of people, even people that were considered bullies at the time, because at the time I wasn't really having any of it. Like coming from one culture into another, you bring that with you. So like I said before, like French people are sort of blunt, sort of straightforward and honest, and they don't really shy away from speaking their mind or anything, or even take anything from anyone else. So for someone to come into my face and try to push me out of the way, or even bully me in a way, I would either assess this situation, or I just wouldn't take the rudeness, because I'm not that sort of person to just back down and just lay down and just take it, and yeah. So there were quite a few conflicts with other students at school, and just kind of kept myself to myself, just because it wouldn't be fair if I just let it happen to me, and I didn't want to be this old person to just be this, to be seen as weak or feeble, or just, I mean, if you saw me before having to wear glasses, that's something I need to mention actually. Having to wear glasses and like being super skinny and slightly short, you'd think, oh, this guy, what can he do? And you start to sort of see these things and put yourself in the box, and that can easily be dangerous for someone like myself or for anyone else who fit that demographic. And so you have to sort of make a decision. You either stand up for yourself, or you step out of the way and just let people push you around. But yeah, that's one thing I forgot to mention. So back in France, when I was about 4 or 5, I started wearing glasses, and it's something I never really wanted. It was sort of, I thought I was fine. I thought my eyes were fine, but apparently I needed glasses because my eyes were getting weak from watching TV or whatever it was I was doing. And I've always worn them, and I always felt cursed by wearing them. Yeah, it's a thing where I thought these will always curse me, because people will always think of me in a particular way because of how I look, because people judge from first appearances. So I never really grown any confidence because of that, because I thought I would never gain any confidence from doing that. So I always felt cursed in that sense. And then not until maybe 15 years later, I would sort of be more comfortable within it, with wearing them. But yeah, one thing about school in France compared to school in England is it's always going to be sort of a hierarchy. And in France, there is that, but it's not as severe as it was here. and it's something I kind of had to sort of be aware of and sort of mind myself from. So having a lot of these conflicts that I was talking about, and knew there'd be some form of hierarchy in being the way I am, and I was sort of at the bottom of the food chain. So I knew the only thing I had was my self and sort of my what do you call it? That word slipped my mind. I always use it. So I knew I always had myself and my morals, and if I let go of my morals, then I would sort of lose part of myself. So hence why I kind of kept myself to myself and kept myself out of trouble and stuff. And growing up and realizing where I came from, the fact that I came from a different country and settled into another country, and having to build myself up, I was very conscious about the choices I had to make. I couldn't really mess around. I couldn't really like waste my time or waste my energy in my years on doing whatever I wanted, because like growing up the way I have in a very low income sort of family, you start to want to do better. You start to want to survive. So I tried my best to do as well in school as I could. I became not a nerd or teacher's pet, but I became a good student for the sake of progressing and doing the best I can, or the best I could, so that I can get a good enough job and get myself in a position where I'm happy enough to do whatever I want. And yeah, that's sort of a good way to...
Do you consider yourself a Brummie?
To be honest, I've never considered myself a Brummie. I've never really considered myself British, actually. I've always considered myself to be French because at the year in the years I left, I was integrated within the culture, so I knew I came from the culture. I came as, you could say, an intruder or an outsider, sort of a legal alien, to say the least. And that's also stuck with me, only because I never felt as if I was always going to be accepted, and at times I never were. Not because people were racist or discriminative, just because people were different, and the way people live were different to how I lived, and that's always so defined me as a person, being French and being European, or even being an outsider. I always felt as if I was always going to be different, but it was never really a bad thing. It was more a realization that I was unique in that way, and that was sort of my USP as for myself, I guess. So when people ask me about where I'm from, I always say I'm from France, because that's why I grew up in. One thing I will say is one of the biggest differences I sort of realized and kind of found out was the difference between sort of people of different ethnic backgrounds here to France. Now, like I was saying earlier, growing up, I never realized, and I was a bit ignorant about the real state of France and the people, and the fact that people are more racist and less eager to give people from ethnic backgrounds opportunities to do what they need to do. And here, it's more... What I didn't really like about here is the fact that people are kind of segregate themselves. So the Asians keep to the Asians, black keeps to their blacks, because they don't really fit anywhere else. So white people, even the English people, kind of stick to themselves. And only a few pockets of people sort of mixed together in sort of different areas. So somewhere like Kids Green or even Quinton or even Newtown or even Handsworth, you'd have little pockets of people so mixing together because of obviously where the background kind of came up in. The culture you grew up in defines you as a person here, but in France, everyone is so French, so it's all the same, but you get a lot more people mixing together. So loads of different people live in the same sort of community. You have obviously the Africans, but then you also have a mixture of sort of the Africans and the Arabs and the Algerians and so white people sort of mixing in. And it's never really been an issue. There's never really been an issue about culture or like ethnicity, unless it's obviously the racist ones, and you'll only get that a lot more in Paris because people are just great in Paris. And that's one thing I kind of realized, and one thing I didn't really like about the UK, the fact that people sort of segregated themselves because they didn't feel they should or needed to or felt welcome with other cultures, and it saddened me a bit, hence why I kind of kept myself to myself. But I will say that one thing I'm always going to be grateful is the opportunities I've had here. The fact that in France, if I was still in France and wanting to go into filmmaking or acting or go into the arts, no doors would be open for me. There wouldn't be a scheme or activities or art projects that would want to integrate sort of people from different backgrounds or even from different ethnicities to allow them to go into the arts. Or there wouldn't be any projects to go into sort of low income areas to integrate with the people there, or even have community projects there, because people wouldn't really care about that. And the people above in France wouldn't really care. They'd care more about integrating, sort of progressing forward with whatever they're doing and sort of patting themselves on the back rather than allowing other people to sort of integrate within that. So for someone like myself, to go into the arts would be a no-go. Even Paris would just be like, no, you're just dumb for thinking that you're not going to get a job from that, you're not going to make any money from that, you're not going to survive, and people won't allow you to do that. And the fact is, it's the hardest truth. Like my cousins out there, or even friends, last time friends, they're having to sort of go into sort of the basics, or doing IT or even engineering, things that would earn them money, so things that are safe. And I find that slightly sad, because for me to have come here and taken the biggest gamble of my life and go into the arts and go into film, I was able to get the opportunity and get into it much easily, because there were so many different doors open for me, whereas they don't really have that, because French people don't really, or even the system doesn't allow them to gain these opportunities. There are programs similar to that, but they're run by other French people from different backgrounds rather than white French people who want to help others. Obviously, I wouldn't really know too much in depth of that, but that's how I see it in my reality. Obviously, because of the change of the government there for the last few years, it's gone better now. But before, with the whole banning of the religious symbolism and banning of the burqas in workplaces and stuff, it's gotten quite shaky. And it was sort of, that scares me, but makes me slightly fear to go back and feel at home. So when I went back in 2015, I felt more out of place than I would have felt going back home. So going back to Lyon, to Bron, where I grew up in, where I had made friends, I felt like a stranger. I felt as if I wasn't allowed to be there, because I was so far removed from it. And it it felt as if I wasn't as French as I wished I was. But all the nostalgia and the truths that I sort of kind of realized made me realize that there is still part of me that feels as if I am from there and where I grew up in. But I can always say that people say that I'm more English than I am French now because I've been here so long, because of my accent as well. But although they say that, I still feel more French because of where I've come from. But at the same time, I am still from both cultures. So yeah.
How do you feel about telling your story?
It felt refreshing to have gone back and to have revisited old memories and reviewing some of the things that have had happened and some of the things I'm quite grateful for as well. It felt, yeah, refreshing.
How do you feel about talking about your past with someone you don't know?
I always feel as if it's important to share my story as well as share other people's stories, and for someone who doesn't know me, it's important for them to understand where I've come from without having to prejudge who they are by their appearance or even what they've done.
How do you think your story might impact people's thoughts on migration?
It might shift their perspective about migration, because there's different interpretation about migration. There's different ways to see it. There's a negative way where people come in and they ruin the system in their image, and then there's another way where people coming from another country and they settle here to live a new life. And migration is one of the most important human thing we can ever do as a species. People migrate, animals migrate to different places because they find it convenient, or they find a new source of they find new resources. And to migrate from one country to another is just something people do anyway. To deny or control the flow of migration is to restrict progression, in my opinion.